Ismael Perez. Hello. It's beautiful to meet with you and it's beautiful to connect with you.
Likewise, Kerry, I've been asked by my viewers to reach out to you for months now. So here we are, and it's a grand pleasure and great
Mm.
honor to be here in your presence. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much. Let me just adjust my screen while I'm got my faculties about me. It's been such a long time coming, Ishmael. I've had so many recent requests from people. You've got to be in touch with Ishmael. So I'm really glad that we found each other. And I'm quite excited. I'll tell you why. The people who listen to me know that the information I get is from me. It's from Kerry. It's not from, I haven't read this in a book. I haven't studied from somebody else. And then when I connect with somebody else who I hear from all of our followers is speaking the same speak and talking the same talk, it makes me so excited, Ishmael, because the truth is there is kind of like one overriding harmonic that we tap into. And when we do, truth lands up speaking with one tongue through many different people. And it sounds like that's what's been going on. But where does before we even start, where does your information come from? I don't know you. And maybe a lot of people who are watching from my side, maybe they won't know you either. So let me start by just asking you, where did you start? Where did you get your information from?
Sure, thank you. So I am what you would consider an awakened starseed. I've been awakened ever since I was a kid, and due to my religious upbringing, I was forced to suppress this inner knowing. However, at the age of 2021, I discovered Priya Kundalini yoga and I started implementing that. And then that's when all my memories came back. So most of my information, especially regarding galactic knowledge and cosmic information, dealing with other realms, other universes, and so on and so forth, comes from my galactic self. So I do believe that as consciousness, we do operate various avatars all at the same time on multiple dimensions and densities and timelines and the time coordinates, where the past and the future are all happening simultaneously, as proven through quantum mechanics. So I'm very in touch with my higher self, which is a 10-foot galactic feline that is part of the Council of Lyra. And so when I first started receiving memory of my home planet being destroyed by negative reptilian race. I do say negative because there is polarity in every race. I don't like to generalize.
Mhm.
I started getting downloads as to how it all unfolded, and so that's when I started writing my I guess I would have to say my main groundwork, which is our cosmic origin. So I've been tapping and getting downloads for about 15 to 20 years now from my galactic self. However, I also do research, Kelly. I also dive into ancient manuscripts. I also dive into highly classified information, just to see if there's any validation. So, in order to confirm, of course, a lot of my transmissions, and so that's how I'm able to arrive um, at the information that I present. It's a combination of both things. It's a combination of me getting galactic downloads from my higher self, and then, of course, doing the research to confirm all that information. So that's who I am. I'm also a teacher. I teach online courses. I help teach people and remember who they are and really just remind them of how powerful they are as multidimensional beings. And I'm a writer. I'm currently working on a third book, which is going to be a sequel to our Cosmic Origin. I have two books already published. My first one, which I actually republished about 3 months ago, was published back in 2008, which reveals like the secret history of the war between good and evil here taking place in the third dimension. That goes into like the history of who the Earth Alliance was, the Melchizedek Brotherhood, the Order of the Blue Rose, the Knights Templars, and the indigo race lineage that they always protected, which is now manifested in the form of the star seeds that are here living among us. And then I also go in detail as to who this cabal is and how really they kind of hijacked us during the times of Atlantis. And then in my second book, which is a prequel. No, I'm sorry. The first one is a prequel to the second book. our cosmic origin, I go more into the galactic side of things and how basically the war here between the Melchizedek order and the order of the Luciferian Babylonian Brotherhood, which is a human reptilian hybrid race, could be traceable back to the wars of Orion. Well, technically, the wars between the negative and A syndicate groups, and of course, those that are part of the Emerald Order, the Intergalactic Council worlds, as we call them, the Seal of Covenant of Palador. This, there's so many names to describe what the forces of light are at a galactic and cosmic level. So that's what my second book does. It kind of explains how this whole thing started and how it's all kind of coming into fruition with the last war that is taking place here now. But in our timeline, which is really a war on consciousness when you really think about it. And so that's a little bit about myself. I've been in the limelight for about 3 years now. I had to force myself to get on social media. 4 years ago, I was totally anti-social media. I was a hermit. I didn't want to do nothing with the social media world, understanding that it was part of an agenda to spy on people, and I just didn't want anything to do with that. And a distraction. But then when my business partner was telling me, well, if you're going to be publishing a book, Ishmael, you have to have a following. And so I was kind of forced, you could say, to get social media, but in a way it was a blessing in disguise because, I did very well. I didn't realize that there was a void, that there was a community out there who were desperate for this type of information, not desperate, but rather who were yearning to really understand beyond, what they're teaching us currently regarding like who the Anunnaki are. But I felt like they needed to understand the bigger picture beyond the Anunnaki and how it all ties into, our cosmic origin. And that's who I am. And for my audiences, can you tell us about yourself as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I just love the fact that you and I both got the same memo. I mean, we're wearing the same
Oh,
t-shirt color.
yeah, that's cool.
Um, for your audience who's never met me, my name's Kerry K, and I've got a long story that I'll just summarize as briefly as I can, and that is that when I was really young, I was incredibly ill. And I was so sick that for most years of my childhood, my mom had a calendar and she would mark off on this calendar how many days I'd spent at home and how many days I'd spent at hospital. And it pretty much always worked out that I'd spent more time at hospital than I did at home, with, of course, the goal being just to get to 1 year where I could just tip that chart and spend more time at home than the hospital. But illness was a very solid part of my childhood. And
Mm,
in that illness, I got an incredible opportunity because I spend so much time nearly dying. I spend so much time on the other side of the veil. And sometimes I would spend weeks there, not knowing if I would come home out of hospital and just sort of hovering in that in between life and death space. And when you do that enough, it begins to feel like home. And I began to immerse myself so deeply in that world beyond the veil because I literally spent more time there than here. So when I was in my 20s, that's when my health, well, late teens, early 20s, my health started to improve. And at that point, I really got to integrate for the first time. So imagine I've got all this information, but it's literally sitting out here in the field around me. And now in my early 20s, now the next task is the integration task because the info was there, which is the way I see most human beings right now. They've got all the information in their head. And when information is in your head, but it's not in your body, like it's not integrated, then it doesn't really serve you because you might know something intellectually, but at the cellular level, you're not integrated. Therefore, it's not really your own truth, it's somebody else's truth. So in my early 20s, I began communing with a group of beings who I began to call the Galactics. And I called them the Galactics purely because I couldn't possibly call them the aliens because that was just stupid. They weren't alien, they were galactic beings. But I also understood that I was a galactic being. I also understood we are all galactic beings that we just forgot. We got unplugged. And the years from my early 20s till around about my 30s were the years of integration. And then much like you, Ishmael, I am still, not I was, I am still the person that if we're at a party, you probably aren't going to hear me speak. I'm not a chatty person. I'm not a out there kind of gal. I'm certainly not a social media babe. It's not what I ever wanted. Yet I had all this information and I thought, and this, I have to laugh at my lack of wisdom on this one. I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll get other people to talk about spirituality. So I started a podcast and I got all these guests on. How I never got your name. Probably it was like, I don't know, just before 2020. So it was like 2018, 19. And I got all these guests on thinking, I'll let them do the talking. And Ishmael, I nearly pulled my hair out because I was like, I'm listening to people dance around the truth, but no one's going in there. And I never understood the profundity of what I had learned. I never understood. I didn't take it seriously until I started to listen to what the spiritual community is talking about. And with no disrespect to anybody, I realized they're all regurgitating the same misinformation. It's like they're dancing to the same offbeat song. And then I realized, holy hell, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to be my own voice. So 2020, I got booted off of Facebook. Was the best thing that ever happened to me, because when I got booted off of Facebook, I lost all my following. I lost all of what I was doing. No record of it, no history of it. So I started afresh and I started as my voice, as Kerry K. And here I am as Kerry K, delivering the truths that sometimes, I don't know about your work, Ishmael, but sometimes people say to me, geez, Kerry, you're a little bit hard hitting. Like your truth is sometimes a little bit uncouth and a little bit crass and a little bit direct. And I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that I don't beat around the bush. I do it with love, but I'm also very, this is how it is, you guys, like the spiritual community in my eyes needs a little bit of a wake up and a little bit of a shake up. And it's just truth that will do that.
Yeah, it's just like a loving parent who wants to discipline their child in a proper way. You have to be direct. You can't just, be indirect. You have to say, hey, this is the way things go. You can either do it this way or that way. But if you do it this way, this is what the results are going to be. But if you do it this way, you will, achieve whatever it is that you desire. So I like that you are very direct. We're living in a time where we can't sugarcoat things anymore. We have to be raw and real because, believe it or not, Carrie, there's a lot of people in this community that are, in a way, whether they know it or not, promoting a false light,
Oh, yeah.
matrix. And
Oh, yeah.
and that's where we have to have the discernment. And so I always tell my followers, whoever you listen to, including myself, always check with your intuition, because your intuition will never lie to you. That is the God portion of yourself that knows all truth because it's connected to everything. And I always tell them, do your own research. He or she who tells you to take what I give you face value and not research it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Beware of those false prophets. Those are the ones that are trying to build, for whatever reason, the cult leaders. This is not about that. This is about reminding people about their own divinity and also reminding them to do their own research and really become their own critical thinkers. So I always tell people to just take what resonates and discard what doesn't, and just always remember that you are your own individual in the end.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like, we don't have to agree 100% on everything. I sometimes get people say to me, Kerry, I agree with you on da 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 da, but there's one thing you said I got an issue with, and then I go, fine, have an issue with it. I'm not going to debate it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to dance around where you are. I don't know where society got the idea from that we all need to 100% agree with each other 100% of the time. It's okay for me to listen to you and go, most of what you say or most of what that person says, I'm on board with, I resonate with. I think it's unreasonable to imagine that somebody is going to be 100% in resonance with you when, as human beings, we're not even in resonance with ourselves. We've still got to get there. And we're so used to spiritual teachers being somehow an authority figure, which we are not. And I know this already from you, Ishmael, even though I don't know you, I know from listening to the way that you speak that we're on the same page. And that is, every person is here to lead themselves.
Absolutely.
And you and I are just switching that on for them.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to deter people from the idea of this God Savior mentality outside of yourself to inward, to uncovering and discovering that you are your own Savior. And
Yeah.
that is my premise of my teachings. Um,
Yeah.
I hear and I listen to some of the influencers out there that are promoting this idea of a God savior theory or alien savior theory. The galactics are not going to do it for us. I always tell people that. And if you want disclosure, we are it. It's
Exactly.
coming from people like Kerry, people like myself, and others that are sharing their truth, that are coming out of the closet. Um, and
Yeah.
I believe that, we are going to see some sort of, you could say, I want to call it bifurcation, bifurcation of two different realities pretty soon, which are coexisting right now.
Yeah.
Um, what do you have to say about this bifurcation of timeline,
The
according to your?
two world split. I mean, we're literally living it right now.
Yeah,
And I know that everybody listening, this is not just something that's happened to me or you. I know everybody listening has had this experience where, let's say, for example, you're talking to a group of friends, or you're at a shop, or you're in a public place, and you think to yourself, am I invisible? Like, why are people ignoring me? I watched it happen to my husband today. We were standing in a shop. I swear the cashiers behind the counter looked right through him as if he wasn't there. And they served everybody around him except him. And this is one of the tiny little ways in which we see the two world split already taking place.
right.
Splitting, but what that means is from a frequency level, we're gathering into two separate groups.
Hmm.
And when I use words like split and I use words like separation, I don't know about you, Ishmael, but I've had a lot of particularly very spiritual people say, oh, unity consciousness, everything must be one. We can't split. There must be wholeness, which to me is an absolute fallacy.
Hmm.
This is not about forcing division upon anyone. Rather, this is about unification of two different frequencies that don't belong together, that don't have the same objectives, that don't have the same desires, that are busy doing two different things. And these two different worlds are in the process of gathering frequency. And in gathering frequency, they're moving apart from each other. One of those two timelines moves into 5D, or that which we call Ascension. And I'd love to hear your take on Ascension. And the other moves into 4D. And there's many interesting things that this other split is in the process of figuring out, in the process of doing. Part of it is that they have the opportunity for a negative timeline, that which we would call a negative timeline, meaning they have the potential to go into an AI simulated world. They have the potential to go into transhumanism. They have the potential to have that dance and
Hmm.
play that play. Equally, they also have a potential to shift into a higher gear and to shift into more of an autonomous reality where they can eventually move off into 5D. That's one world, that's one split. The part of the equation that I focus on the most is the world that is becoming the 5D world. That's the world that we're here to create. And that world is not somewhere else. That world is right here on planet Earth. That world is the renewed Earth. Some people call it Gaia. I've never resonated with the name Gaia. I can't tell you why. I don't. I resonate with the name Eden, but hell, you could call it Timbuktu. It really doesn't matter. Names and words to me are honestly the least important thing. The most important thing is, what does it feel like? When I spent all of those years being beyond the veil, there were no English words. I don't know why people think God speaks in English or the universe speaks. It does not. It does not speak in words. It speaks in resonance and energy. And when
Absolutely.
you're aligned to truth, you start to just know things and you start to just feel things. And that 5D world, which is the world that we are becoming, is in the process of revealing itself to us. It already exists. It's in the process, though, of bleeding through into our reality, whilst at the same time, our reality is in the process of dissolving. It's kind of like a dissolving of one and an evolving of the other at the same time, which is exactly why it looks as confusing and chaotic as our world currently does. So if I could paint a visual for everybody, I would say, imagine yourself dissolving into tiny little pixels and instantaneously rematerializing. So it's like a dematerializing and a rematerializing. That for me is what we're doing at the ascension point, which is the final split. Right now, it's a split in frequency. And that split in frequency is getting more obvious at the ground level, at the everyday world level. Like I described that incident with my husband. It's a tiny example, but it's one of the ways that people can see we're gathering frequency to do two very different things on the planet. It's not bad and it's not wrong. And so many people, I don't know about you, but when I speak about this, Ishmael, so many people get so concerned about, what about my pets? They say, what about my children? What about my loved ones? I don't want to lose anybody, because I feel like we've got so much of that Atlantean memory, almost like a PTSD that we've brought with us. Started in Lyra, it carried on in Lemuria, it carried on in Atlantis. We've seen this happen so many times before. Now, I'd love to hear from you before I rattle on anymore. I'd love to hear from you. How do you explain to your guys the two world splits and that point of the final break apart of the two worlds?
Well, in order to understand what this bifurcation of timelines is, we have to go back to the original Earth, spiritual Earth that existed, I guess what we would call during the times of Atlantis. This was a reality that was operating in the fifth dimension. So in a way, it's always been here. It's just that there's been some sort of an overlay over it that was put into place by advanced negative alien technology that many would call the Anunnaki, the negative Anunnaki. Of course, there are two factions who took over the affairs of our world, and using the same technology that they're using today, but back then, because again, AI has always been around, it's been a huge threat in the cosmos, if you want to get technical, using the same technology that they're trying to use now to thwart us into this, again, technocratic, dystopian, type of AI simulated world. They did in ancient times. They did, but this time what they did is they kind of put a layer over the real Earth. And that layer was set into motion by what is known as an intergalactic computer network that was being broadcasted from Betelgeuse and Orion and Alpha Draconis, which are two power centers where there's these negative, I guess some people call them fallen angels or negative entities that are really just consumed and controlled by Archon consciousness, which is at the core of the Luciferian Antichrist agenda. What they did is they used this intergalactic network to drop the Earth's frequency into a lower reality. But that, Kerry, had a temporary time limit. And that frequency, many believe, comes to an end sometime between now and 2030. They don't know exactly what day, but they know that it was put into place temporarily. That's all I know. And so what I understand is that as that current overlay comes to dissolution, the only real reality will remain, and those that are vibrating to this new reality through emotional, you could say, vibrational frequencies of unity consciousness, compassion, brotherly and sisterly cooperation, by cultivating mentalities like that, and by doing the spiritual work, those are the people that are going to remain behind and reap the original Earth that has always been here, but for the last, we could say, 15,000 years, it has been kind of hidden through this fake, false matrix reality that is now coming to a dissolution. And this explains why there are two timelines, why the dark forces are trying to continue a negative timeline through, metaverse, the digital avatar, augmented reality, and all that stuff. And then, of course, that all kind of ties in with the cabal's agenda of this CBDC currency, which is not going to happen in our reality, of course. But for those that are not spiritually evolving, that are not awakened, they're going to have a harsh decision to make when this split takes place. And I believe that that split is coming soon. So we have the positive split, which is being orchestrated and generated by the organic timeline. And that involves not only the positive galactics, but our star, our galaxy, our universe as conscious sentient entities. They're all kind of working together to allow the people that are doing the spiritual work to once again become restored back to the original earth. And then you have the negatives that are trying so hard to, you could say, what's the word I'm looking for, to kind of like to maneuver, to try to cleverly maneuver people, those that are not awakened, into this idea that they will be living forever, but only if they integrate with technology. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing two post Homo sapiens sapien realities that are upon us in the near future. You have, this is what I call the ascending human, which is going to be a physical angel. And that is really us using our full deck, reconnecting back to, through the activation of our dormant DNA, reconnecting back to our full consciousness, right? And then you also have the Homo Borg, which is what they call a transhuman. And so that's what's causing the timeline split. So like, just like you mentioned, it's not like they're physically splitting. It's that because everything is held through resonance, morphogenetic fields, right? Which sets the construction of the physical reality. Those are two different frequencies that are eventually going to split, just like a single cell splits into two. That's what the Earth is undergoing right now. The Earth is undergoing that split. And based on your frequency, that will determine if whether you stay behind and partake of the old Earth. I don't want to call it a new Earth because it was really the original Earth, as you would call it, Eden. And you know, from those that are going to bypass their spiritual evolution and do it in a lazy route by integrating with technology and going into this other agenda, or this other timeline rather. So that's how I'm seeing this timeline split take place. But you know, we also see these in the prophecies. You know, the prophecies, according to the original prophecies, from what I remember, they talk about the restoration of the Garden of Eden, the return of the light, the return of a new heaven on earth, the restoration of a new heaven on earth. And then they also talk about 1,000 years of rule by the Antichrist. Well, I've always believed that the Antichrist was a God, and I've always believed that those two millenniums are going to be coexisting, but on different timelines. And after those thousands of years, that's when the final battle takes place between us, the angelic humans that are going to be using our full capacity, and of course the AI time loop, which includes all of those cybernetic intelligences that have been plaguing the cosmos for billions of years. And that will determine, you know, the outcome of a new cycle in the cosmos. But from what I understand, Kerry, I believe that we've already won that war, as to why we're still here.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so my explanation of us returning back to the original Earth is that this current reality construct is coming to an end very, very soon.
I love the way you explain things, Ishmael. And I now understand why our audience kept telling us to get together for a chat. One of the things that I got to do, this was like a couple of years ago, was the reason I want to share this is because you said, from what I understand, we've already done this. Like, it's already a done deal. We're just walking those steps, those final steps, because we've got to do this. We've got to, even though we know that we are headed for an ascension outcome and an ascension event into a 5D form, we still have to walk these final steps. We can't just sit back and go, oh, okay, the race is won, we're done. You know, we've got to walk ourselves through the journey. This was a couple of years ago. I've always had a really close relationship with the Galactics, who I started connecting to, like I said, in my 20s. One of the most memorable meetings we ever had, Ishmael, was a meeting where I felt really nervous, which was new, because normally when I'm in the presence of the Galactics, these are 5D beings. So you don't really feel nervous. You feel very calm, you feel very loving, you feel very peaceful, you feel very easy. It evokes your own 5D-ness when you're in their presence. But I was nervous. And I thought, ooh, this is an interesting feeling. And I later learned that I was going to go into a meeting with members of the Anunnaki. And I thought, well, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm equipped. I don't know if I'm the right girl for the job. I don't know if I can do this. And the galactics, who I have a great relationship with and really trust, said, you're good. You've got this. We need an Earth witness. We need somebody from planet Earth to be in on this meeting. And you're it, so just come. So I went into the meeting, and I really was there as mostly a witness and a little bit of a contributor as well. And I witnessed such an astonishing thing. I witnessed something that was such a ripple. It gave me an insight as to the ripple of light that we all are. It was when the Anunnaki were busy pulling out of their investment in our reality, realizing, okay, you know what, humanity, you guys are headed to 5D. We've done everything to prevent this. We've put everything in place to stop this. And we didn't, and we couldn't. But even worse than the fact that we couldn't stop your ascension is that you guys, as you start ascending, because you, the human populace, have got some of our DNA in you, when you guys start to move into 5D, you start, because of quantum entanglement, rippling into our reality, and we start ascending too, and we don't want that. We don't want this compassion. We don't want this love. We don't want this attachment to wholeness. That's not our deal. So it wasn't a case of the humans pushing them away and the humans going, be gone with you, you're the bad guys. It was them removing themselves from our reality because they couldn't withstand it. They couldn't be in the field that we were in the process of creating. It was one of the most gorgeous moments I ever got to witness. And that's when I realized, wow, no wonder there's so much attention on our planet and what we're doing, because we're doing the unthinkable. We're doing the undoable. We are in the throes of creating the impossible. And to a large degree, we've already done it. We've done it at the energetic level. We're just stepping into it now at the physical level. Right. And when I look at the world and I see from an intuitive perspective what it looks like, to me, what I keep seeing is one timeline that we're temporarily in. Because at the ascension point, that is what I see as the two world split, that actual micronova, the solar flash point. But what I see happening right now is those two streams of consciousness that are contained within one reality, readying themselves to move into two different worlds, or really just two different frequencies ultimately. And where we are right now is there's like what I would describe as an energetic membrane covering or surrounding each one of these two timelines. And as we move on in time and we get closer to the ascension timeline, we'll see that that becomes, I say it's like a glass window. It's not literal glass. It's just what it looks like if you're looking through energetic or intuitive eyes. It looks like this first thin energetic membrane that builds and gets bigger and bigger, thicker and thicker, until eventually we're in two separate frequencies. When that day that I got to participate in that meeting, I saw what the Anunnaki were doing. I saw that what they were doing is they were saying, we can't work with you guys who are moving into that 5D frequency because of your ripple into us. So we'll just hang out with those part of the planet that are splitting off into 4D, but even those part of the populace, that part of the split that are moving off into lower frequency, at least lower than the 5D frequency we're moving off into, the Anunnaki still couldn't be around them, because even those guys in the future are building their reality field up to such a point that it has a negative ripple on the Anunnaki. And I say negative in inverted commas because it's actually a beautiful repercussion. It's a beautiful ripple. It's just something that negative faction of the Anunnaki wants no part of. So that was one of my most gorgeous galactic meetings that I ever participated in. And it really allowed me to understand a little bit of the scope of what we're actually doing. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It definitely resonates. That kind of reminds me how we are all integrated, even with the Anunnaki, with all the galactics, and what we do here will heal all the galactic wars, all the conflicts that are actually
Exactly.
taking place in the past and in the future, because they're all the
Yeah.
same. We're like at the what I call the hub of both directions right now, and that totally resonates with me.
Mm.
In order in order for any level of intelligence or any specimen to evolve to the next stage, we have to also evolve too, because we're all integrated. We're all integrated. And which brings me to my next point of how the descent to me, and this is what I've been telling my people, is that all the descent is the great fragmentation, is the great division of wholeness, of singular consciousness into first starts off into three and then seven, and then the seven further breaks off into 12. And this is where we get these concepts, the seven, the 12, and the Trinity, the 12, the seven being, God's number. And how everything in existence is in terms of the three, mind, body, and spirit, seven chakras, 7 days of the week,
Mm.
12, 12, or what we call the 12 Elohim races, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles, the 12 pantheons, or the 12 gods of ancient mythology. So there's a reason why these numbers keep repeating themselves, because that's the pattern in which singular consciousness breaks off into. But that's the descent. The ascent is the reintegration point where all of a sudden all the different parts um, it will begin to reintegrate back into like for instance, the individualized units of consciousness integrate back into the avatar, right? The avatars reintegrate back into the oversoul. The oversoul reintegrates back into the monad, and then the monad uh,
Mm.
with the other monads become the one singular
Mm.
consciousness that has always existed and that has always kind of been at the underlying level of all reality, which is exactly what quantum physicists call the unified field. And that's
Mm.
where we're heading back to. The unified field is that universal awareness that still exists at the underlying level of reality and was the original consciousness before the division started.
Mm.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I love talking about wholeness because it's a concept that we as a human being, one separate individual little human being, really battle to understand because we're not in wholeness with ourselves. We're so fragmented at a psychological level. We're fragmented at an emotional level, at a spiritual level. And if you look at, you discussed it earlier when we were speaking about the old world, the false matrix. And so I don't mean the original Earth, but rather the old false matrix that we all came from. That was shrouded with a layer of energy. I've called it the quarantine zone, where we were separate from the organic universe. So
Mhm.
separation has interwoven itself into our field for eons, for so many lifetimes, that we can use the word wholeness. But to actually feel the resonance of wholeness, this is a whole new thing. And we're only just tipping into that ability to reconnect with our own wholeness. And when that happens, we realize, oh wow, you know what? When I look in the mirror, I'm just one human being. But when I close my eyes, I am a totality. I am a multidimensional totality that just keeps going and keeps going. It's like the Russian stacking dolls. That's how I see it. Like the human
Mhm.
beings there in the middle, the tiniest little doll, that's the human being. And around the human being are all these layers of multidimensionality that we are held by and held in. So that one word wholeness has such a almost infinite sense around it when we tap into what it actually is. We're talking even about bifurcation, knowing full well that bifurcation can only ever take place under the umbrella of creation. No one leaves, no one dies, no one goes anywhere. We just have different experiences, but are all ultimately a part of the oneness, the one supreme creator of all that is. And what a beautiful time we find ourselves in when we are remembering this, not there at an intellectual level, because this surpasses intellect. But at the level of heart, the level of emotion, the level of embodiment, we're actually getting not to speak words, but to feel words. Words that remind us, oh, I am so much more than I've ever been told I was. And when you really allow yourself to tune in and you allow yourself to connect with the vastness of who you are, then you realize, like you described your galactic self, you realize I am a cosmic being and I am a God being. And it is the most gorgeous, humbling experience to remember yourself as the totality and then to bring that totality back into what was once a fragmented human being. That's how we were born. We were born fragmented, and now we're putting the pieces back together again. So I love the fact that we get to do this together.
Yeah, same here, sister, which reminds me of the fact that the creation and the creator have always been one. This is where I believe that, it's all one and the same. And as proven through quantum physics, through our experiences, the universe continues expanding and growing. So in a way, we are all contributing by virtue of our own experiences. Even every part is that significant, right? Because every part contains the whole, they say, in a holographic phenomena, which means that as an individual, every single person out there is co-creating our universe. So it's not an event that took place by one single being. It's an event that is being generated by all the fractals, because all those fractals are part of that one single being. And so I've always believed that the creation and the creator were one and the same, as opposed to a duality type of ideology where they believe that the creation and the creator, or the creator lives outside of the creation. And that's not true. The creation is embedded with the consciousness of the creator, because that's the creation is the creator exploring more of its singular self through individuated parts, you know, and that's how it grows.
Yeah.
And we're all in this together.
And it's a ploy of the archonic, depraved, psychopathic minds. It's a ploy of theirs to believe in separation. That's their, if you will, superpower. It's their, it's not a power at all, but they perceive it to be what makes them powerful and what sets them apart. Because what they did is to cast aside God, to push away the light that they were once connected to. And in that separation and in the psychopathy and the depravity of that separation, they got a sort of a sense, almost like a high of power, as if to say, I'm bigger than God. I'm bigger than creation itself. We don't need this God fella. We don't need to be connected to that. And they used intelligence to construct plans like the false matrix that we were all once a part of, that I believe we absolutely volunteered to be in, by the way, because we volunteered to steer the ship back, meaning our planet, to steer it back into the organic world.
Absolutely.
But those dark ones, they believe in separation. They revere separation. But the ultimate truth that they are eventually going to come home to is the same ultimate truth that we all as individuals are remembering right now. And that is the truth of wholeness. It's the truth that we can only ever be part of the same field, part of the same frequency, part of the same love. And everybody listening gets to be reminded, not just at the level of words, but at the level of energy, that they're also a part of the wholeness and totality that goes so far beyond what our brains can comprehend and what our eyes can see. This is one of the most gorgeous, enthralling miracles that we could ever walk through. I don't know about you, Ishmael, but I see a lot of people in my comment section, and they're sad. And they say, oh, it's all futile. What's the point of being here? Or this whole ascension thing, I didn't sign up for this. Forgetting what a gift it is, to be able to be here, to be able to participate in it.
To be able to save a planet, to be able to save the organic timeline, which will be reflected on every reality. And by so doing, guess what? All of those specimens out there, all of those beings that decided to disconnect with the organic unified field to then depend on external technology, which led to the AI time loop. What we do here, it's going to correct all of that. And so, I always tell people that, not only did you volunteer here, but it's part of your resume. You've done this in many systems where we go into these inverted systems to implode it from within in order to rescue, whether it is those societies or those planets, to restore them back into the organic universe. Because what it boils down to, Kerry, and this is something that I've been talking about over the years, is that it's really not a battle against reptilians or against the cabal. It's a battle against raw, pure intelligence, which is artificial, something that is not embedded with the soul or emotions, which is what we call the AI time loop, the machine, and the organic, original blueprint. And that's what it all boils down to, is fixing that distortion that led, unfortunately, to the false matrix reality. Because a lot of people think that the false matrix reality is just existing here on our planet. And no, this false matrix reality was able to assimilate the density all the way to the 11th dimension, from what I understand. And that explains why a lot of fallen celestials joined the path of Lucifer, which is really the path of integrating with technology and therefore losing your connection to God. And so what we're doing here is really amending all of that. And so I always tell people that you should be proud of yourself, even though you don't have recollection of why you chose to come here and why you're here. Eventually it'll all come back to you, but you have to also do the work. You also have to go within yourself and ask to be guided, ask to for more of this to unfold. And yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here and to be a part of a team of the most powerful light beings and celestials in the cosmos that chose to be here at this time to help a planet that dropped in frequencies, long.
Absolutely. And so true. I mean, there are multiple false matrices. There are multiple of them. And when we collapse ours, which we're in the process of doing, we collapse all other false matrices at the same time. This is not just about what's taking place in our individual lives or even on our individual planet. This is a galactic event that we're participating in right now. And in order to participate in this, you had to have accolades. Right. You had to, just like you've explained, you had to have that resume that says, I'm qualified for the job. My brain doesn't remember, but at the cellular level, I hold the codes. I hold the memory somewhere deep inside of me. And that's the memory that's being jogged right now. Ismael, I know we got to go, but the last thing I want to share with you, just when you were speaking, this delicious piece of information dropped in while you were talking. And it's kind of obvious now that I say it, but it's not something I'd ever thought about before. And that is, do you remember that scene in the movie The Matrix where Neo goes into the machine? Right? Do you remember? So it's kind of like as the Matrix movies come to closure, Neo goes into AI itself. So he goes into the machine. And you used the words just a couple minutes ago. You spoke about the machine. And it was when you said that I had the little penny drop moment. And I thought to myself, that's what we're doing on social media. Like you and I both had an aversion. We didn't want to be on social media. And yet here we are. So in a sense, we're inside the machine. In a sense, we're using AI. We're using this to convey our message, which does what to AI and does what to the false matrix. It imbues that timeline with our energy. And so it begins to corrode the fabric of that artificial world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for anybody that's watched the Matrix movies, you'll remember that scene with Neo going into the machine at the end.
That's what we're doing here. We came into this false matrix to correct things, but not only correct things here, but correct things everywhere in the cosmos.
Yeah. What a thrill to do it. What a thrill to connect with you, Ismael Perez. Thank you so much.
You too, Kerry K. It's a great honor to finally meet you in person.
Absolutely. Thanks you
See you soon.
guys for telling us to get together. And yeah, Ishmael, it'd be beautiful to connect with you. I know there's so much more we can talk about. I'd love to talk with you about stargates and solar flares and what's going on at that level. I'm sure people would love to have another conversation. So why don't you guys let us know in the comments what, if Ishmael and I get together again, what do you want us to talk about? What in particular do you want us to have a chit chat about, and we'll use that to fuel the next conversation. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank
Lots
you,
of love.
Kerry. Have a good one.
Thank you.